A message from the Government of Canada.
My fellow Canadians, tonight I address you in the midst of a crisis. An unscrupulous corporation has seized control of our nation's oil reserves. Oil is a key input that keeps our factories running and our homes warm. Without it, our aggregate supply, the total amount of goods and services that we can produce as a nation, have been crippled. Businesses are struggling to meet demand and jobs are at risk. Let me be clear, we are not a nation that bends to adversity. Together, we will overcome this. Let's talk about how this impacts the economy. When the price of key inputs, like oil, rise sharply, the cost of producing goods increases across the board. This shifts the short-run aggregate supply curve to the left, resulting in higher prices and lower outputs. History has taught us this lesson with recessions like in 1978, 2008, and now again. On the other hand, there are cases like 1997, when crude oil prices dropped and economies rebounded. Factories expanded, jobs were created, and inflation stabilized due to this increased output at each price level. Some other factors that affect aggregate supply in the short run are wages, labor availability, labor productivity, and taxes on businesses. In this situation, clean, renewable energy will be our path forward. Over the next decade, we will invest heavily in green energy infrastructure, creating jobs, reducing production costs to increase our GDP per capita, and ensuring a stable supply of power. We will also implement tax and subsidy incentives for businesses similar to the 2022 Inflation Reduction Act in the US. Solar, wind, and hydroelectric power will reduce energy costs long-term as compared to fossil fuels. This groundbreaking work will attract young talent, and new technologies will ensure efficient use of resources. All of this will cause a decrease in the cost of production and an increase in the quantity and quality of production going forward, shifting the long-run aggregate supply curve to the right, increasing production opportunities and lowering prices. In 2023 alone, clean energy accounted for 10% of global GDP growth, and green energy created over 6.4 million jobs worldwide. This is not just a vision for the future, it is a solution that we need today.
Economists often assume productivity levels when it comes to aggregate supply. Factors such as technological advancements, education, and management practices are all built into these assumptions. However, if these assumptions don't align with reality, technological improvements are slow, workforce skills lag, the aggregate supply curve may overestimate an economy's productive capacity. In simpler terms, the curve might predict more output than is achievable, especially during crises like this, where assumptions about stable input costs are no longer true. This is one of the first limitations regarding aggregate supply. Another limitation is the inability of models such as the aggregate demand and supply curve to determine and answer fundamental questions such as inflation. For example, if oil prices rise due to this crisis, the AS curve will shift left, increasing prices and reducing output. If consumer spending increases due to an increase in wage, prices will increase and output will also increase. These scenarios give us a dilemma. Should we focus on boosting production to stabilize supply or on cutting demand in order to reduce inflationary pressures? These questions reveal the limitations of simply relying on economic models such as aggregate supply and demand.
To my fellow Canadians, you may feel fear tonight. So let me explain how the aggregate supply curves work and how they connect to our economic challenges and opportunities. In the short run, aggregate supply is sensitive to production costs such as wages and raw material prices. Since the curve slopes upwards, price levels lower. Businesses produce less because profits are cut down, therefore prices rise as production increases, resulting in an upward sloping curve. So let's take a look at the pandemic. Disruptions to supply chains affected 25% of Canadian industries, raising costs and reducing outputs. This leftward shift caused stagflation, which is higher prices and lower GDP. In contrast, in 2023, the decline in commodity prices helped stabilize costs in supporting Canadians, which led to a 1.2% GDP growth, which was led by provinces such as Quebec and Ontario. So let's take a look at the long-run aggregate supply curve, which is a vertical line. Over time, the economy operates at full productivity capacity. No matter the price level, the amount of goods and services in the economy can sustainably produce, which remains constant in the long run. This curve highlights the importance of innovation and resource availability. For instance, the green energy investments, which added to $320 billion globally in 2023, shifting the curve to the right. With renewable energy creating over 475,000 jobs in Canada, it secures long-term economic growth. Let's take a look at the Keynes graph. The Keynes curve starts flat. The flat portion represents the economy operating below its potential, where unused resources allow for increased output without raising prices. The steep section shows that resources becoming fully utilized, further increasing the demand, driving up prices rather than output. Canadians, let's take a look at the pandemic. In the pandemic, there was a 5.3% GDP decline. We saw the flat part of this curve in action. Government interventions to stimulate demand helped bridge the gap between the actual and potential output, demonstrating the value of the Keynesian principles during the crisis. In the long term, investments in technology and innovation will shift our economy curves, ensuring a resilient and sustainable future. Together, we rise to meet this challenge.